Hey guys, welcome to Sled Talk. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I would like to take a second of your time and introduce this season's title sponsor is Bikeman Performance. So they've decided to jump on board and help push the podcast. And if you're unaware, Bikeman is the elite level when it comes to aftermarket performance parts on your sled. So be sure to check out their site, link in the description. And without further ado, let's jump into the show.
Let the band play.
100K on the Protect, living life with no regrets. I can't designer when I get dressed. Hey. Summertime on winter fresh. I put her legs behind her head. Night she gone to bed. Bye bye. Every day it's a new test. I just keep chasing these chicks. Living life with no regrets. Living life with no regrets. Living life with no regrets. Living life with no regrets.
Oh. That's a great way to start off the podcast. Shout out to Smasher, just replied to my story. Well, shit, I need a flannel now, he says. He just bought a hat, too. Oh, we're going to talk about him in a minute. He's got some questions. Sled Talk listeners, welcome back to the next episode. This is episode 44. And I'm going to rock this episode solo. So I hope you don't mind listening to me flapping my lips for a little bit. Yeah, I wanted to come on here and kind of switch things up a little bit. I like the idea of evolving and trying new things. I don't want to get stagnant and just do the same type episode every single time. And so Jeff and I were kind of talking about different ideas, different concepts, what have you. And we kind of came up with, let's just put something out on social media. And so I put a couple questions out on Instagram, specifically asking, followers, what kind of topics do you want us to talk about? What kind of specific questions do you want us to answer? And so we actually got quite a few responses. So that's the route that we're going to go. But before I go into that, I do want to say that so much of what we do between the podcast and filming comes from your guys's influence or your guys's data, right? So if you want to see something different on YouTube, if you want a different style of the podcast, if you want to be on the podcast, if you think we should reach out to X company and do something with them, what have you, either leave a review on the podcast platforms for this episode, or if you're on YouTube watching this, comment below or send me a direct message on any social media channel. Everything, if you don't follow us, is just at SledSend. And let us know, because we're kind of doing this for ourselves, yes, but at the end of the day, this is a snowmobiling podcast for the snowmobiling industry. And so we want your guys' feedback so we can critique what we're doing. We can get better at what we're doing. We can expand what we're doing, get more listeners, more viewers, and just share all things snowmobiling. So with that being said, give us your feedback. We appreciate those of you that have already. It kind of just helps push us in a cooler direction, because obviously if we're talking about things or filming things that the majority don't really care about, then we're doing something wrong. So with that being said, we'll go right into some of the questions here. So I just took a bunch of screenshots off of Instagram for everybody's responses. And so I'm just going to go through them. And yeah, we'll just see where that takes us. So one of the first questions here from Maddie, she responded to one of the question stickers saying Polaris recalls and Skidoo chain case issues. So I'll start off with my thoughts on the Polaris recall. So before I get into too much, I will make the statement that I did not snow check this year. I snow checked the 2021 sled. That's the last time I snow checked. So I am not one of those ones that snow checked and is waiting on a sled. So my opinion about the recalls, take that as you will, because I'm not sitting waiting on a sled. I didn't have problems, whatever, what have you. So, but I won't get into the actual specific recalls. Everybody kind of should probably know what they all were. And so I'm just going to speak on my opinion from, everything watching on social media, other videos guys have made about the recalls, talking to people directly that have snow checked. Kobe still, I don't think he still even has his. So I'll kind of just speak on like my thoughts on that. So first of all, obviously it sucks. Because you go spend, if you're getting a boost, I don't know, $22,000, $23,000, whatever they are. Ideally you would like to have that in November, of course. So it is unfortunate that those things pop up, and it's, you see on a lot of like Facebook groups and stuff, there's a lot of negativity around it. There's a lot of shit talk on Polaris. There's people leaving Polaris and going to a different OEM. And I understand all of that. I'm not saying that you're wrong necessarily for feeling that type of way. Again, this is just my opinion. I understand how you can spend $22,000 and not have the sled show up, or have a bunch of problems. It's frustrating. Right. And like I said at the very beginning, I didn't snow check. So I'm not one of the ones that is actually in the trench dealing with that problem. I'm just speaking from the outside looking in. And I would like to think of how I would feel about it if I was in that trench and in that situation. So I'm going to spin this a little bit, because the way that I look at almost everything in my life is, if I make a decision to do something, I don't have the right to bitch about it because I made the choice. So with that being said, if I decided to snow check a Polaris and there was all these recalls and all these issues and all these problems, getting all worked up and pissed off and upset about something I have no control over, and talking shit and being a thumb warrior and all this it's just, I don't know. I don't really agree with it. I understand the frustrations, but again, you decided to snow check that sled, and whatever is happening with Polaris is entirely out of your control. And so when you're on the Facebook group or on these pages and stuff, talking mad shit, I don't know. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Just because again, this is just me. These are my thoughts, my opinion. I just don't go through life like that. It is unfortunate that there were so many recalls. There were so many problems, people not getting their sled. I know people that have snow checked a new sled for almost every single year for almost 20 years and still having problems. And so I totally understand the frustration. But yeah, I just don't think it's of any service or value to just put all that negativity out there. We get it. It's unfortunate, but you made the decision to snow check that sled, and that's what it is. Sometimes things happen and that's outside of your control. So instead of getting all filled up and angry and negativity and putting all that out in the universe, to which will come back in a negative way to impact you in the end anyways, it's just, it's pointless. So I won't go too much deeper on that, but that's kind of my thoughts on that. The Skidoo chain case issues, I don't ride Skidoo. I'm not around a ton of people that do, but I have, so I'll just speak on what I have been seeing on social media. And yeah, I've been seeing several people having issues with their chain cases. Not only Skidoo, but Lynx too. And so that is unfortunate, but also I'm assuming she's probably meaning the Gen 5 or the new Lynx. It's interesting when OEMs come out with new sleds and there's problems. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say about that other than it's unfortunate. I have never ran a sled with a chain case. Personally, I have no preference to, but that's just me. So moving on to another question from my buddy Shay. Responded to your question sticker with youth in the industry and how we cultivate that. That's actually a really good topic. Because that is the next generations, right? And keeping snowmobiling alive is dependent upon us handing it down to the next. And So I have a 10-year-old daughter, and I have not taken her riding at all this season, but she is very involved in awareness around all the merch and SledSend as a whole. She always asks to watch the podcast and watch any of the riding videos and clips and stuff, and so she's very engaged with it, and I obviously talk a lot about it, so she gets the influence from that. It is my intention to get her riding if she wants. If she doesn't want to, I'm not going to make her, obviously. But I do think that there is a pretty good level of importance of shedding light on snowmobiling to the younger generation. And I think you're seeing it a lot with, kind of what we're doing right now with a podcast and YouTube. Like, I mean, I know like Muskoka, everything that he's doing, I know so many kids that idolize that guy, that watch his show every single morning, or his every episode every single morning. They get super excited about it and are looking forward to the next video. And so, like, obviously the younger generation, my generation too, is on social media a ton, but the younger generation below me even more so. And so I think, I think snowmobiling as a whole is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and getting quite a bit more attention to it. But I could just be saying that because I'm like in the middle of it and so consumed by it. So that's all I see, I guess. So, but to your point, Shay, I think it is super important. It would be interesting to have you come on the podcast and get your response on how we cultivate that. So I know we're trying to get him on hopefully next week for next week's episode. So maybe I'll bring that up to him then. And then he also responded with another question. Sorry. Off-season fitness, lifting, CrossFit, both, and how/if it changes during the season. So for me specifically, this is bad timing because I haven't been in the gym for a couple weeks, which is not good. Jeff was just flipping me shit about that this morning. But it is extremely important. So off season, especially, but even during the season too. I don't do CrossFit. I have done it, but holy crap. I prefer to just do lifting. But it does play a big role, I feel, in your endurance and your stamina on the sled. This topic actually comes up quite a bit. It just came up last weekend when I was out riding. I think the hardest thing for me and where I live, I think here in Hermiston, I think the elevation's like, I don't even know, like 400 feet or something. So regardless of how much you're working out in the gym, or how strong you are, if you're training all the time at that elevation, then you jump on a sled and go to 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet. Like, oh my gosh. There's like elevation masks and all different kinds of things that you can have to help fight that. But this also came up in conversation too. It also doesn't matter how much you work out in the gym. You still go ride a sled and you're using muscles that you're not necessarily using, obviously, in the gym, and it just wipes you out. And so the only way to combat that is to just ride more. But for me specifically, like when I'm in my routine, working out in the summer versus working out, in the gym during season is really no different. I would say in the fall time, I start doing a little bit more endurance stuff. I hate running. But I do more of that, or like cycling, just more high intensity. I ramp that up a little bit in the fall, just getting prepped a little bit for riding. But really the weightlifting and stuff doesn't really change that much for me through winter or summer. Next question from Snow Derby. Shout out to you, Travis, previous podcast guest. He said snow bikes. And snow bikes is it becoming super popular. I see, Travis, that you just got a setup, and you've been riding in the jungle with all the other snow bike boys, Marcus and all them. yes, me specifically, like I have never really spent hardly any time on a dirt bike. I have a little pit bike at my house that I just got last summer, and that was like my first exposure to dirt biking. So I think snow bikes are awesome. They're continuing to evolve. They can do some pretty cool things, but obviously it's pretty well known that you'll never have the horsepower as a sled. So yeah, you won't see me on a snow bike. That's for damn sure. Next one here, Anthony responded to your question sticker with avalanche training and safety. It's been mentioned before, but last year I took a level 1 Airy motorized avalanche course and a 1-day rescue course, which, was really, really eye-opening. There's just so much stuff involved in that we just don't even understand. From understanding how to use your transceiver. A big one for me was understanding the science in the snow, and all the different layers and different types of snow and temperature and all these different things that affect potential avalanches. It's pretty crazy. But I also will say too that I do feel like it is starting to pick up some pretty good traction on social media. You're seeing a lot more what I would consider, younger influencers that you're seeing them going and taking classes and courses, like on the snow motorized courses, which is super important because I feel that there's so much attention on social media and so much attention on those guys specifically. So I kind of feel in a way that people can see that and, oh, well, those cool guys are doing that. Maybe I should look into it too. I don't know if like making it cool is the right way to go about that, but in a sense, I mean, it kind of is. And so it's good to see more. I definitely have seen a ton more this year of people that are taking the avalanche stuff way more serious, and expressing it and showing it to all of their followers and viewers. And so it'll be interesting to see over the next year or two, how that continues to get more exposure and grow. I think it obviously still has a long ways to go. There's still a lot of people that aren't willing to get the gear or aren't worried about it, or, oh, we don't ride in areas that ever have that, or da-da-da-da-da. So there's still definitely a lot of that out there, which is, after taking a course and learning about all that stuff, you kind of realize how much of an idiot they are for making those kind of statements. If that offends you, like, I don't really care. Because the avalanche stuff is scary. And so it is important to get more people aware of avalanche training, and how to use your gear too. That's a really big one. You spend all this money, and if you don't know how to use it, it's kind of pointless. This next one from RyeBrown11 on Instagram. Skidoo guys, T-Motion or T-Motion Delete, flex edge track versus non-flex edge. Yeah, I don't really pay too much attention to the Skidoo, or the T-Motion or T-Motion Delete. I mean, I'm aware of what it is, obviously, but I feel that my stock of knowledge around that is extraordinarily limited, that it's kind of pointless for me to talk about that. So, but Rye Brown, if you're listening to this, send me a message and we can get you on the podcast and you can talk about it. Oh, Mr. Jeff responded to a sticker. He asked the question, can Jeff do a bow tie? And the answer to that is he probably can if he tried it. He's never tried it. So we'll leave it there. Oh, Smasher. He responded asking, what's harder to ride, a sled or a dirt bike? Oy. Again, that's one that I can't really speak on because I probably have 4 hours on a dirt bike in my life, and it's just a little 125 pit bike. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll clip this though, put this on Instagram and TikTok, or if you're listening to this on the podcast or watching it on YouTube, comment below your guys' thoughts on what's harder. For those of you that spend a ton of time on the dirt bike and a sled, which do you guys feel is more difficult? Smasher sent another one in asking, why is Climb the best brand of gear in the industry? If you deny it, you're just settling. Oh, man. Well, I couldn't agree more with that statement. It's true. Why is Climb the best brand of gear in the industry? I mean, they just hold themselves to that standard. After we went over and shook hands with Dustin Pancarry and did the whole Climb tour and got to see inside of everything, and all the science that goes into the gear itself, was pretty eye-opening for me. I know I've spoken on it a ton before. Jeff is partially through editing the Climb tour video, so that is coming. I mean, so here's the thing for me too, and I've said this before, but like I've never worn anything but Climb. I have had a 509 helmet, but that's it. And so part of the reasoning for that is, first of all, when I started, like I just like really nice things. And so Climb has always been perceived to be the pinnacle. And so that's initially why I chose to rock it. And then ever since then, several years, I've never once had an issue with any piece of Climb gear that I've ever had, unless it was affected by me, right? Like if I tore a hole, caught it on a running board, whatever. I have never had an issue with boots, gloves, helmets, anything from Climb. I've never had an issue with their gear that wasn't at my own fault. And so that's part of the reason, too, that keeps me in Climb, because I'm always dry, always warm if I have enough layers on. I've just never had any issues. And so having that feeling around it and then going to Climb headquarters and seeing everything behind the scenes really kind of solidified like why they are the best. And I'll make this point. I think it's interesting. If you see it once in a while, you'll see somebody wearing a suit from X company that's not Climb, but then they have Climb boots and Climb gloves on. I think that's one of the funniest things. Even people that may be sponsored by another company, but yet they're wearing Climb gloves. That might be a touchy subject, but I think, with that being said, I won't go into it any further, but I think that speaks volumes. Here's another one. Whitney responded to the question with trail versus mountain riding. So I think that's another one that we should have you on the podcast as well, Whitney, to speak about that, because I know you do a lot more trail stuff where you're located. So for me specifically, I'm kind of I really do not pay attention to anything but mountain riding. Me specifically. I'm always down to bring somebody on the podcast and talk about it. But again, my stock of knowledge around the flatland stuff is very, very limited because I just don't expose myself to that very much. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. Where I'm at, we just don't do that. We just mountain ride. That's it. But again, I'm always down to, because this is a snowmobiling podcast. It's not a mountain riding snowmobile podcast. So I'm always down to learn more and get somebody on the podcast to talk about that stuff and the importance of it. But yeah, I kind of just have like blinds on. I only really pay attention to mountain because that's like all I do, and that's really, that's just really all I pay attention to. But it is important to shine light because that is a pretty big group of riders that are on the trail and flatland stuff. So, Whitney, I know I've talked to you before in the DMs about getting on the podcast, but if you hear this, shoot me another one. We can get you scheduled to come on and kind of talk about that stuff. For those of you listening that aren't watching, I'm on my phone right now reading through these, so bear with me. Toby responded to your question sticker with underrated cheap upgrades to your sled that are game changers. That's a pretty good one. The first one that comes to my mind, I actually don't have one because I have my kill switch underneath my bars. But that little race rubber to go around your kill switch where you have to actually like hold the kill switch down to shut it off, which for those of you that don't know, it's preventing, hitting it and killing your sled when you don't want it to die. I think I saw a story, it was like $7 or something, I think, for that little race rubber. So pretty cheap. And I don't think there's anything worse than like running a line and having a branch hit your kill switch or having you slip your hand off and kill the sled or something in the middle of not an ideal place where you want to shut your sled off. So that's the first thing that came to my mind, Toby, as I read that. Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Just want to take a quick second to introduce another one of this year's sponsors. We got RSI, so whether you need handlebars or grips, seat covers, controls, etc., doesn't matter. Use SledSend 2023 at checkout for 15% off your next order. Trying to think of some other cheap upgrades. Definitely a tether if you don't have one. I mean, obviously that's super crucial and could be considered a game changer. It's a big safety thing as well. Trying to think of some other cheap. I would say a can, just because you're shedding so much weight relative to the price. Now again, like I think you can get a can for $200 or a can for $800. So that just kind of varies on the brand, I think. But I think that's a pretty good upgrade, just because you're shedding so much weight relative to price. If you guys comment below if you're, because we'll pull clips out of all these and put them on social too. So I want to know your guys' thoughts and opinion. If I didn't mention some that you guys can think of, underrated cheap upgrades to your sled that are game changers. What do you guys have? Comment below. Let me know. Austin responded with thoughts on pull start versus electric start systems. So my sled is a pull start, but then my second sled, which is quote my fiance's sled, but it's the sled that Jeff always rides, has a electric start on it, just because my fiance's can't really pull to start the sled. And so I hear Jeff all the time. he really, really likes that. Whereas my sled, like I've done a ton of stuff for lightweight, a ton of stuff. And so he doesn't really pay attention or mind that there's a little bit extra weight with the battery and stuff to have that. He doesn't care one bit because days like what we had this last weekend, when everybody was getting stuck and super exhausted, snow was amazing. Jeff certainly liked to be able to reach down and turn the key and start his sled and go. Because, I mean, it would be interesting if there was like a pull count throughout the day, like how many times you start your sled, right? Pull the rope and start your sled. And that does wear down your endurance and stamina throughout the day. It does take quite a bit. May not seem like it, but through the course of the day and doing everything else, it actually really does. So that's my thoughts. I don't think I personally would ever have an electric start on my sled, but that's just me. Austin chimed in with another one. He said track length, preferences, and uses. So track length, preferences. So it's just that. It's a preference. You see a lot of guys like Brant and different people talk about like, well, what's your riding style? Like, are you in an area or like a certain style where 163 is better for you versus, or are you Maverick Walker and want to do 146 and just dance around all over the place? So it's your own personal preference, right? So, I will say for me, like I've got a 165 on mine, and moving forward as I'm progressing into wanting to do a little bit more of the dancing around, moving forward, I will not go beyond a 155. So I've said this before too. I would like to get 2 different sleds this next year, a 155 boost and a 146 9R. And those are my preferences because I just want to maneuver the sled around, whether it's reentries, bow ties, whatever. It can be done on a 165, obviously, but it's definitely a bit more difficult. It's just a lot more length to get around. So again, I mean, it's kind of your preference. And also I would say too, like your riding area, there's a lot of places around here locally where like, and I've had this conversation with several people, I just got a text that I should have shut that off. Lost my attention. I've had this conversation with multiple people that like around here, super epic, deep days, tons of fresh powder. Those days that you want a 165 is really just, it happens, but it's so rare. Like the amount of times where I've been out riding here locally where I was like, oh my God, thank God I have this 165. It happens, but it's pretty rare. And so for me, it's more like, well, I'd rather just have a 155 and I can play more. So that's, I believe, your personal riding style, but then also like your riding area, and your typical average, type of snow that you're in should depict that. Austin with another one, my guy. Thank you for asking so many questions. Any hints on upcoming merch? Yeah, so literally yesterday, today is Thursday the 9th, I think. Yep. Yesterday, Jeff busted out a handful of photos here in the office of all of the new merch. So we've got 2 new beanies. We've got 4 colors of flannels that have a leather SledSend patch on them. We got stock back up on the curved hats. If you're watching this, it's the one I'm wearing right now. It's a water-resistant material with an actual sled cut out with SledSend in the middle of it. So we've got these as curved, and we've got just a regular snapback flat bill gray one. Got stocked back up on those. What else? We got a bunch more of the OG SledSend cutout hoodies, and there's a t-shirt. There's a t-shirt that has come out, but yeah, I'm not going to talk about it here yet because we got some videos coming for it. I'm making the announcement here soon. So yeah, Austin, there is a handful of new items on the website. For any of you that are interested, it's just sledsend.com. That's where we have all of our merch. So finally, we got everything that we have on hand finally on the website. I've had the flannels for quite a while, and I've actually sold quite a few literally off my back. Just seeing people in person and stuff that wanted to cop them. But now finally, those are on the website as well. I think those are probably one of the fan favorites. Moving on. Justin Ponzer, what's up, my guy? Responded to your question sticker with talk about how no one wants to give you ski poles if you have loud exhaust. Oh my gosh, yes, 100%. That's being on that right side, giving somebody a ski pole that's got an absurdly loud snowmobile exhaust is just it's to the point for me where I avoid it. Unless I'm the only other one out there. Thankfully I don't ride with too many people that have the super loud ones, because you're kind of seeing a big shift. Like, that was super popular for a bit, I feel, but on average now you're getting way more people that are just like, nah, I don't need that. That's way too loud. And you can get into the emissions and the noise on trails and all the legality things around all that stuff. I had a GGB mountain can on my 2020, and it sounds cool from a long ways away. But I mean, halfway through the day, your head is just rattling, having to listen to that. So I definitely don't care for loud cans at all. I think they're super annoying. That's just my opinion. We got a direct message from Avalon. She said it could be cool. It could be cool to do a podcast talking about riding in the Midwest versus out west, and maybe some info for people from the Midwest looking to ride out west for the first time. Avalon is a previous podcast guest, but same thing that I said to Whitney that was mentioning this as well. Avalon, we should have you back on the podcast to talk about that specifically, because I know you're from over there, and you do travel out west. I know you were in Revelstoke, going all over the place in the west to go ride. I definitely think it's becoming a more popular thing for sure. I do know people that'll get all loaded up and drive 15 hours to come out west and stuff that fortunately I can be at in an hour, which is all, it's all relative. Yeah, I mean, you're definitely seeing a lot more growth about mountain riding through social media and stuff. It's a pretty sexy thing, I'll say. So it's attracting a lot more people. I don't see a ton of people around here from the Midwest because I'm all the way in Oregon, so you have to drive through Montana and Idaho and Colorado and Utah to get to me, depending on what way you're coming, which is pointless. So, yeah, I think, Avalon, it would be good for you to maybe come back on and talk about that, and then if we could pull somebody, from Montana or from Idaho or Wyoming that sees a lot more people coming from the Midwest, and kind of speak on their engagement and their thoughts on, spreading some knowledge on bringing more awareness to the people from the Midwest that are looking to come ride out west for the first time. Again, that's one of those things that I don't have much knowledge around. So would like to bring, and if you're listening and you're one of those, reach out to me and we can get you on the podcast and talk about that more in depth. Yeah, Avalon followed up with another, just kind of a follow-up, just saying, I know you're more mountain-based, but I feel like on all the snowmobile Facebook groups, people from the Midwest are always asking about riding out west. Well, yeah, it's where the goods are, so I don't blame them. But I think it would, so yeah, I'll just reiterate what I said. Like, I think it would be important for you, Avalon, to come back on and discuss that stuff specifically. And then, again, if you're somebody that is in the West and you do deal with a lot of people from the Midwest coming out to your riding areas, reach out to me and let's jump on and kind of talk about that a little bit more. One second. All right. Question from Justin. Responded to your question sticker with not becoming effectively alone on the mountain. Says, I think it would have saved Kin's life. Yeah, so my opinion on that, I think not riding alone is probably like the number one rule in snowmobiling. And when I was in high school, I always broke that rule. Because when I was in high school around here, I was really getting into riding, and I didn't know anybody else locally that rode. And so I would just go up to our family's cabin and just ride around there. Pretty safe area. I wasn't getting into anything necessarily, but that was beside the point. I don't really see that too much anymore, people riding by themselves. I mean, obviously, it's one of the absolute worst things that you could ever do because you never know what could happen. I'll speak on one instance. I remember it very clearly. I was riding by myself. It was pretty flat, but I was climbing up on huge brush piles from loggers. You know, they just put all their huge brush piles together and come back in a year or two and burn them. And I climbed up on one that was I don't know. It was probably like the size of like a 3,000 square foot house, I guess is the closest thing that I could compare it to. I don't know. It was huge. And there's probably about 4 feet of snow total. And I jumped up there and it was, kind of flat up top, and I was just kind of riding around, and I started getting over towards the edge to jump off and continue on. And just like 5 feet from the edge, everything sloughed in. Like, it just, all the snow and everything just sloughed in. My sled fell down into a hole. So like the top of the snow where I was riding, what would have been like the bottom of the track, after it fell was like the top of the hood. So the snowmobile fell its full, height all the way down into the snow. And it was 4 o'clock. It was getting dark, and I was by myself. And luckily I didn't get hurt or anything. I was physically fine. But I was in a little bit of a situation, and again, it was starting to get dark, and I was a pretty green rider at this time. I had a shovel and I had a headlamp and stuff. And I was able to dig myself out, and everything was fine. But it was still, at that moment, it was like, oh man, what if I got pierced by one of those sticks or something crazy? Anything could happen. So I remember that really, really vividly. Cause I was like, oh, this is probably not a good idea to be by myself. No cell phone service. At that time, I didn't have any kind of communication devices or anything. So yeah, riding alone is no good, but I think specifically I'll go into not becoming effectively alone on the mountain. So, meaning, I think, Justin, in the sense of like, if you're out with a group of, 4 guys and in a big zone or whatever, it in the blink of an eye, everybody can disperse, and like nobody can have eyes on anybody, which can obviously be bad. And how you combat that, maybe trying to stay in like pairs or something at least. Because I think we can get into an awesome epic zone and everybody just goes crazy and adrenaline takes over, and you just want to go hit all these cool features, and then pretty soon you're a ways away from your buddies, and you could get over the next ridgeline and out of sight, and something could happen over there and have no idea. Your buddies have no clue, which is pretty scary. I mean, I've had that happen, and I just got stuck really bad. Like, nothing physically happened. I didn't get hurt or anything like that, but that kind of shines the light on, oh man, I'm super, super stuck, and they don't really know, my riding buddies don't know where I am. And then jumping on the radio and trying to communicate that. I think there's ways to help combat that. And I think maybe trying to stay in pairs, playing cat and mouse or anything, might help that a little bit. That's kind of my thoughts. Cole's got one. He asks top 5 riding locations in the U.S. Boy. I personally haven't been too many places. I've hit one place in Washington, several places in Oregon. There's several places in Oregon I haven't been to. As of right now, I've only been to Sandpoint, Idaho, and then I grew up right outside of Sealy, so I've ridden over there. So I won't say my top 5 riding locations because I really haven't been all over the place. So I would say from what I see the most of on social media, I would feel probably McCall. Island Park is a really big one. Cook City, Sealy Lake, and Jeff just walked in to check the camera. What's a top riding location in the U.S., Jeff? I'm only speaking about mountain stuff too because that's all I pay attention to. McCall, Island Park, Sealy Lake, Cook City, probably like Steamboat Springs in Colorado, huh? Yeah, I said McCall already. That's probably
Catherine Creek, baby.
Catherine Creek, hell yeah. I'm just basing that off of what I see the most, me personally, on social media. Like that's where I see the most people riding are those 5 areas. Cole also asks best bang for your buck snowmobile mods, kind of similar to what Toby asked. Best bang for your buck, definitely a can. 15 minutes left. I've taken up that much time already. Holy crap!
48 minutes. Dude.
Really? No. 48 minutes? Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry for dragging you guys through this podcast for having to listen to me for that long. That's brutal. I actually am at the end. Yeah, so a can, dude, I don't ever want to ride without, this is what I was thinking of when I saw that. So a can and then your handlebar setup. Obviously, if you're using stock bars, just it's so many people talk about it, but there's a reason why so many people talk about it because it's so important. Aligning your brake lever and your throttle, your handlebars in general, making sure that those are all in proper alignment. But then beyond that, I would say aftermarket bars. And the throttle block, brake cover, all that kind of stuff, just getting your entire cockpit like dialed in, because that's the first thing you touch that has any input on the sled. So that's super, I feel, really important. I'm running the RSI bars this season for the first time, using anything aftermarket for bars, and I absolutely love them. I won't ever run stock again, I don't think. So yeah, handlebar setup on your handlebar specifically too. Another little thing is a heated brake lever. Oh my gosh. I'll never not have one of those either. Some aftermarket ski rubbers, cause it sucks blowing those out. Tether, obviously. Yeah, I would say that for bang for your buck. Obviously, next level, if you want to spend a bit more money, I would definitely say suspension. Suspension, I feel probably overall is the best mod that you can do on your sled, period. Jason, last one. Jason says, when are you coming to shred the steep and deep? Shout out to Jason over in Idaho. I mean, hey, anytime. Yeah, that'd be fun to get over there and ride with you. Just going through, pretty sure I hit pretty much everything. So, yeah, Jeff came in and said we were already at 48, 50 minutes now, so that was not my intention to go this long. but I was just going through and answering questions. So, like I said, kind of at the beginning, I would appreciate your guys' feedback. If you know me personally, text me, or shoot me a DM on Instagram, Facebook, leave a comment on YouTube, leave a review on this episode on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're at, and let us know. I kind of had fun answering these kind of questions. It was a little bit different of a layout, obviously, than the normal podcast. And again, want your guys' feedback on your guys' thoughts. Did you like this episode? Did you not really care for it? Would you rather have guests instead of me just sitting here talking? What do you guys want to see more of? Appreciate your feedback. It's what we collect all that data and move forward from there. So yeah, we'll wrap this episode up. Oh boy, I guess maybe I should do a sled talk question. Sled talk question for listeners and viewers. Boy. I'll go back to the very first question about the Polaris recalls. For those of you that snow checked Polaris this year, did you choose to just deal with it and stay loyal to Polaris and get it figured out? Or did you go the direction to leave your snow check behind and go get a different sled or even a different OEM? Comment below and tell me why. So that's my question. We will wrap up this episode. Again, as always, thank you guys for tuning in regardless of what platform you're on. And we'll have a guest for the next show. So we'll see you guys then. Thanks again.
Living life with no regrets. I can't designer when I get dressed. Summertime on winter fresh. I put her legs behind her head. Night, she gone to bed. Bye-bye. Every day it's a new test. I just keep chasing these chicks.